Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NYC Builds Bio monthly programming. My name is Nancy Kelly, and I serve on the steering committee and as a founding member of NYC Builds Bio. I'm joined by my fellow founding member, Mitch Simpler, Managing Partner Emeritus of JBB Consulting Engineers. Mitch, you want to say hello?
Nothing other than to say hello and welcome everybody again to our latest installment. And I continue to be impressed by all that New York City Builds Bio does. And I hope we all enjoy today's installment as much as we have in the previous one. So with that, Nancy, back to you.
Thanks, Mitch. I would also like to acknowledge the founding and corporate members of NYC Builds Bio who make all of this programming possible. We're excited to welcome you all to the 8th and final webinar of NYC Builds Bio's sponsored seminar series with Triumvirate Environmental. This webinar is entitled Gateways to Connecticut, a very important ecosystem in the greater New York metro area, and one that is growing very rapidly with amazing innovations. Our first webinar, held in January, discussed the impact of a recent New York City planning study of the greater New York metro life science economy and all of the subclusters in the greater New York metro area. It concluded that the New York metro region, which includes New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, enjoys the largest life science economy in the United States, and the 2020 census data shows it growing faster than many other regions in the country. Since then, each month, we have focused on the many life science clusters throughout the New York metro area: Midtown West in Long Island City, Midtown East in Manhattanville and Harlem, Hudson Square and Jersey City, just across the Hudson in New Jersey, the area around Mount Sinai Health System and Academic Alley, which is the largest concentration of the best academic medical centers in the world. Then we moved east to Brooklyn and Long Island, and northwest to the Hudson Metro Center in the Bronx, Westchester County, and Hudson Valley. You can find links to all of those sessions on the New York City Builds Bio website. Also, check out our website for other upcoming events, in-person tours, and receptions, which are scheduled throughout September, October, and November. We are especially excited about the inaugural Philly Builds Bio Symposium at the Union League of Philadelphia on September 13th, and the 2022 New York City Builds Bio Symposium at the Time Center on November 1st. Our speakers today include Dawn Hocevar, President and CEO, Bio Connecticut, Peter Denius, CEO, Advanced Connecticut, Chris Oslop, Managing Director, Brokerage, JLL, Kim Kelly, Director of Operations, Bio Connecticut and NHIL Incubators, Mustafa Analui, sorry Mustafa if I'm butchering your name, Executive Director, UConn TIP, Josh Gabal, Senior Associate Provost for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Yale Ventures, Marianne Melnick, Director of Operations, Biolabs, and Mary Howard, Executive Director, Design Technologies. Before I turn it over to Triumvirate Environmental for introductions, I just wanted to cover a few administrative details. We have more than 100 people registered for today, so please keep your cameras and microphones off during the program to minimize technical difficulties. There is a program and PowerPoint highlighting the hosts, sponsors, speakers, and content for the meeting. These will be posted on the NYC Builds Bio website. The program is being recorded and will be available on the website and NYC Builds Bio YouTube channel. Since most of you are participating in listening only mode, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will open up for discussion and Q&A at the end of the program, and during it, if you have any questions, we'd like to make this as much a conversation as possible, and we'll address as many questions as we can. If we have time at the end of the meeting, we will also have a chance for smaller randomized groups to meet in separate rooms where you can open your videos and microphones to talk to each other. You can stay as long as you would like to get to know each other and share stories. Now I would like to introduce Alicia Anello, General Manager, New York Branch, Triumvirate Environmental, the lead sponsor for this seminar series. Alicia?
Thank you so much, Nancy, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Aniello. I'm the General Manager of Triumvirate's New York and New Jersey operation. Triumvirate has been the leading environmental health and safety service provider to the life science community for over 34 years. From laboratory moves to regulatory setup, permitting, and on-site support, including waste disposal, we've partnered with hundreds of life science companies across the country and helped them grow safely, from their early stages in incubator spaces through to production and manufacturing spaces. I've been with Triumvirate over 16 years now, and it's been wonderful to witness so many cutting edge technologies come to life. Triumvirate's success comes from our flexibility and customization of our offerings to fill all environmental health and safety needs through one vendor, thus leaving the researchers and management companies free to remain hyper-focused on their science and the success of their businesses. With the excitement and growth here in our tri-state area, I thought Triumvirate could host this series and place a spotlight on the region in front of our long list of life science clientele across the country. As Nancy discussed, with world-class research hospitals, top universities, and along with growing amount of space and funding being dedicated to life science here in the tri-state area, our location is quite ideal for collaboration between researchers and innovators. Before we set up in New York City, which is where I'm talking to you from, we worked our way down the coast. We started in 1988 in Somerville, Massachusetts, just outside of Cambridge. But we now have hubs in Cranston, Rhode Island, Newington, Connecticut, and then there's me here in New York at the local level, right? And here in New York, we have a full operation since 2003, including the only commercially permitted hazardous waste storage facility in the 5 boroughs. We are the only local resource in this market. Having this facility here puts us in the same seat as all of our clients under full scrutiny of the DEP, FDNY, DEC, and all the rest. We've been providing EHS support and consulting, waste disposal support, emergency response services to some of the largest research institutions in the tri-state area for over 25 years. We have over 45 consultants local to this tri-state area and a fleet of over 60 vehicles. This is the last of an 8-part series. So Nancy, thank you for opening all of our eyes to all the opportunities for collaboration outside and inside of New York. You brought us to Westchester, New Jersey, Long Island, and now Connecticut. We all learned so much, and we're so grateful for all the work that you do. So thanks again for providing us with this platform and helping us to spread the word about all the developments in the tri-state area.
Thank you, Alicia. We really appreciated Triumvirate sponsoring this important series, and it's hard to believe it's over already.
I know. But you know, we've all made so many wonderful connections, and I really can't thank you enough.
Great. So Peter, would you like to introduce yourself and what's happening in Connecticut, which is very exciting?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nancy, Mitch, and Alicia for your sponsorship. I will also note one of our colleagues, or my colleague, Tim Miller, is a former Triumvirate employee. He actually is point for us in life sciences. So I don't know if I should mention that, but he's doing a great job. He's actually on the call, and he's a key part of our team here in Connecticut. So anyway, thank you, everybody, and Nancy and Mitch for your inviting us into this forum. It sounds like we're the caboose in the storyline that you all have been telling. But we're excited to be here. We're thrilled to be included, and we think you know, we obviously want to work very closely with our regional partners and make sure that we are out, you know, really selling the strengths of the region. And there's a lot going on here in Connecticut that we're happy to report on. And I'm also happy to say that I'm not going to bury you in PowerPoint we want to make this more of a conversation. How many of these Zoom meetings do you sit through where it's just one slide after another? I do have some slides, but I have 5 guests joining me from our ecosystem that I think are much better placed to tell the story than I am. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves here momentarily. But just to give you a kind of a preview of how we want to kind of conduct this session, as I said, I'm going to rip through 10 or 12 PowerPoint slides just to give you a sense for how we think about Connecticut and the life sciences community here. And then we're going to open it up to our panelists and have kind of a Q&A session. And of course, we welcome your questions in the chat, or if we are able to open up the dialogue and have you do it live, that's also fine by us. So that's the program. Let me just quickly say who's with me here from Connecticut, and if you can keep track of this order, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves in the order that I mentioned your name and your organization. But I just want to quickly give the list, starting with Mary Howard from ABCT. That's the Accelerator for Biosciences in Connecticut. Many of you may be familiar with Mary, but she's going to share the story of ABCT here in Connecticut, the role it's playing, as will Mustafa. As Nancy mentioned, he's at UConn. He runs the Technology Incubation Program, or UConn TIP as it's known. Yeah, Marianne Melnick is here from BioLabs. BioLabs, as many of you may know, is an incubator and a facility manager that is doing great work across the country. They recently opened here in Connecticut. Chris Ostap from JLL is going to give us the real estate perspective. And finally, Josh Jabal from Yale Ventures, as Nancy mentioned, is also here with us. So, Mary, I'm going to go back to you, ask you to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your organization. A lot of this is going to come out in our panel discussion, so you can feel free to keep it brief, and then we'll move right to Mustafa. You're up next. You're on mute.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you, Nancy, for the welcome to Connecticut, and Alicia for sponsoring this regional series. It's a pleasure to be here. ABCT, the Accelerator for Biosciences in Connecticut, is sponsored by the Connecticut Next program organization for Connecticut, which when we started was part of CI and is now a separate organization. There's a very strong connection with the whole region, and we were actually brought in because of that connection, where we have been working in New York City with the founding the eLab program and the Next Milestone program for SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn, and also the Westchester program for the last 3 years. This is an incredible community. I'll be sharing a little bit more about how the different regions within the region compare, but it's a pleasure to be here. I grew up in Hamden and now live in Branford, which also turns out to be a real hotbed of startups. So thanks for including me.
Great. Mustafa.
Thanks, Peter. Mustafa Analui. I am Executive Director of UConn Ventures. And the function of the group is looking inward to innovation happening within our ecosystem. And for those who are qualified, creating startups and investing in them. And the other side of this coin, as Peter mentioned, UConn has an incubator referred to it as Technology Incubation Program, TIP for short. And that is the incubator with more than 70 startups currently. And it's designed to be an open environment, both for UConn startups and non-UConn startups. We have companies that are coming from across the states and from out of the state. In fact, we have companies coming from outside US that we welcome them. Back to you, Peter.
Great. Thanks, Mustafa. Marianne, you're up next.
Hi, thank you to the New York City Builds Bio team and Triumvirate for organizing this event, and to Advanced CT and BioCT for putting together this panel and bringing us together. Biolabs is here, happy to participate in this panel. My name is Marianne Melnick, Operations Director for Biolabs New Haven. Biolabs, it designs and operates premium lab and office spaces for life science startups to launch and grow their business. We offer fully equipped lab, open lab, private labs, shared and private office space, operational and business support services, and a networking community so our startup companies can focus their time and resources on innovation for their life science-based business. And happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marianne. Chris, you're up next.
Hey, thanks, Peter. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Chris Ostap. I'm the Managing Director for JLL Connecticut. So I run the Connecticut office for leasing and investment sales. And I'm also serve as the tip of our spear for our life science locally here as well. So why I'm here. So I work also closely with our national life science group, big group obviously up in Boston. And I think you guys all probably know John and Cahill in New York, who I work closely with as well. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. And last but not least, Josh Jabal from Yale.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Josh Jabal. I'm the Managing Director of Yale Ventures. Yale Ventures is Yale University's hub for entrepreneurship and innovation. We run a number of programs and services ranging from the university's technology transfer office to accelerators that support both faculty and student innovation, with an eye towards spinning out new startup companies and, generally speaking, trying to get more of the $1 billion a year that Yale invests in research out into the world, into new startups and products and services that can help improve human health and our quality of life.
Great. Thanks, Josh. And just very quickly, a little bit about Advanced CT. We're a nonprofit focused in economic development, and most specifically on business expansion here within the state and companies already here, as well as business attraction, trying to bring companies into our state. We have 4 or 5 key sectors that we focus on, and life sciences is one of them. We work with many partners, including all my esteemed guests that are with me on this panel in our work. We also work very closely with the governor and the public sector and our fantastic team up at the State Economic Development Agency. So that's a quick bit about Advanced CT, and we're always happy to be a point of connection. I think everybody on this call, you've already heard from Connecticut, is willing to jump in and field any areas of inquiry, and we can be a collection point for that, or anyone on this call. Okay, if we go to the next slide. So what I thought I'd do here is just give a little bit of a of a setup on Connecticut and what's going on in Connecticut, and sort of how we describe ourselves when we're out and about, whether it's in state or more typically out of state, telling the Connecticut story. Obviously, we all recognize, and Nancy alluded to it in her opening comments, you know, we have an incredibly vibrant corridor here in the Northeast in life sciences. It's really, I think, second to none. And Nancy, you I think again said I think the most dense part of the country in terms of activity, depending on kind of where you draw the line on the map, but certainly, you know, extending down to Philadelphia and up to Boston. You know, it's well over 300,000 jobs. It's over 100 billion gross regional product. And, you know, you've got 10,000 companies and establishments that are in the life sciences sector operating in the region. That's obviously incredibly powerful. That's part of the reason we're here, is to make each other aware of that and work together to continue to build that ecosystem. Next slide. you sort of drilling down deeper into Connecticut, this is in light blue there, the map of Connecticut on the left slide. And I'm not going to, take you through this in too much detail, except to orient you a little bit on how we think about where the centers of excellence are and the most notable kind of anchor institutions are. I'll start with Pfizer out in the east. Connecticut is home to Pfizer's largest U.S., it might be even global R&D facility with thousands of people. I believe it's 3,000 or 4,000 people in Groton in R&D, as you can see there in the eastern part of the state. Moving due west, our other key kind of pharma anchor is Boehringer Ingelheim, that is based in a 300 plus acre campus in Ridgefield, Connecticut, with also thousands of folks specializing in R&D. It's also an R&D facility. And then, of course, our two guests from UConn, you can see in Storrs, Connecticut, and Yale down in New Haven. Those are the notable kind of anchors to our ecosystem. And around that, we obviously have a vibrant set of companies, ranging from startups to more established companies like Alexion, which was recently bought by AstraZeneca, based in New Haven, where they continue to invest and, in fact, double down. Biohaven, which was recently acquired, the lead drug for Biohaven, acquired by Pfizer for $13 billion. They continue to invest in New Haven, and a number of other companies, including, of course, our other guests from biolabs, our incubators, ABCT, Mary Howard, who you're going to hear more about. These are all part of this important ecosystem that really makes it hum. Next slide. If you just again talk about Connecticut and look at the density, and this is a little bit of a Connecticut hang up, not so much an issue perhaps in New Jersey or in New York, but sometimes in Connecticut we get a little regional. We think about, well, I'm in New Haven, but you're in, Farmington or Hartford. That's only 30 miles away, and people sometimes think about that. That's actually like a different state when in fact it's only 30 miles away. So we like to point out to people that our corridor, as we call it, really starting in Southwest Connecticut and running up to Storrs in Farmington, is more concentrated. It's certainly highly accessible and productive at 300 square miles. Drive time end to end is comparable, if not better than a lot of the other ecosystems that you see across the country. Next slide. And then just taking a look at sort of where we see our biggest strength. And, we are incredibly productive as a state in R&D in particular. And that has a lot to do, obviously, with the people that are here, the institutions that you're going to hear from. And that talent base, particularly for folks that have got these advanced degrees. As you can see here, we're third in the country for folks with biological and biomedical science advanced degrees on a per capita basis, and that yields a tremendous amount of intellectual property. As you can see, number 4 in the nation for bioscience patents, again on a per capita basis. So it's really a combination of those institutions, those anchor institutions, the anchor companies that we have here doing an incredible amount of important R&D work. In that, as you're going to see, is going to lead to a fair amount of investment, whether it's public sector investment from the NIH. In fact, if you could go to the next slide, I think it is our next slide. Or venture capital, and I'll show you the venture capital piece in here in just a second. So as you can see, Connecticut has been a growing recipient of NIH funding. Just one kind of measure of the vibrancy of an ecosystem. we're 5th in the country on a per capita basis for that funding. You know, we're small, but we like to say we punch above our weight. It gets back to the people, it gets back to the institutions and the work that's being done here, the companies, et cetera. We're extremely proud of this. And again, this just is a major contributor to the spin-off activity that you're going to hear Josh and UConn and Mustafa talk about. Next slide. I know I don't need to tell this group, it is all about people these days and talent. And it's a you know, highly competitive world out there. You know, we're fortunate to have, you know, an incredible number of, you know, sort of STEM jobs in the state already. And as you can see, our completion rate is going up, and our concentration and the density of that talent, which is what is alluded to there, number 8 in the US for STEM location quotient. That's simply a measure of how dense is your STEM workforce relative to the national average. And we rank highly in this regard. You know, we have an incredible base of 38 colleges and universities across our very small state. They are producing this base of talent, and we're doing a reasonably good job with, I would say, more room for improvement on keeping those people here in Connecticut and or in our broader ecosystem. Next slide. And as I'm sure is being done in other regions, we're investing in that talent base, and this is really, really important. And again, I'm sure you've heard it before from perhaps other regions and other markets, but what's different about what's going on in Connecticut is this is an industry-led effort, and the model that we're following has been deployed by this group called Next Generation Sector Partnerships in 26 other states. And the hallmark of that strategy is that it's industry-led. So as opposed to our academic institutions kind of going off in a room and sort of designing what they think industry needs in terms of talent and skills in the workforce, we're starting with industry and creating a very important feedback loop between and starting with industry, as I said, and then bringing in our academic institutions, our institutions of higher learning, and leveraging the national movement that's going on in upskilling and reskilling folks to, again, make sure that the people that are coming through our system have the right set of skills to meet what the industry needs. So it sounds sort of intuitive, sounds sort of obvious. We have made a major investment in workforce in Connecticut, and life sciences is very much part of it. Next slide. You know, I mentioned earlier to the important, you know, contributors to any ecosystem, and this is again going to be very intuitive to this audience. You know, what Marianne is doing with biolabs, the work that Mary's doing at ABCT, and our other facilities that we have around the state are absolutely essential kind of lubricants, if you will, to making sure this flywheel continues to grow. And we're very, very fortunate to have these here in Connecticut. Mustafa is going to talk about what's going on at TIP and how that folds in, but it's here, it's incredibly vibrant, and you're going to hear firsthand just exactly the role that some of these groups are playing in supporting the companies and all the other players in our ecosystem. Next slide. Everybody loves a shiny new object, and our latest shiny new object among many that we've had over the last decade or so is going up right now in New Haven. This has been you know, a 2 or 3 year project, and it's in the later stages. A 10-story, 500,000 square foot bioscience building fully leased out by Alexion, now AstraZeneca, Arvinas, Yale, and Biolabs, as you're going to hear from Marianne, is going to be moving in there from their current location on the West Campus at Yale. This was a public-private partnership. It was of course, the proverbial heavy lift, but we're super excited about what this is going to bring into New Haven. The company's the facility obviously is going to be state of the art in every respect, we just think it's sort of more fuel on the ecosystem, more fuel on the fire, so to speak, and it's targeted to open next year. Next slide. And I think this is my last slide, so we're going to go to our panelists next. But before I do, I mentioned earlier funding, and I showed you the NIH funding. This is the private capital that has been coming into our state or is already here in our state. As you can see, we're number 3 for bioscience VC investment on a per capita basis in the country. Whatever sort of metric or whatever institution you may be familiar with, trust me, this is my prior life. I come from this business. It's incredibly vibrant here. We are attracting absolutely world-class investors. Josh and Mustafa, in the work that they are doing in creating these spin-outs that are leveraging the incredible work and R&D that's going on here, has just meant, again, we've been blessed with the ability to import capital. We also have several very high profile venture funds right here in Connecticut, including Canaan Partners, who's a very active and important and sizable investor in life sciences. Okay, I am going to end it there on the formal slides, and we're going to just go now to our panelists. And as I promised, get into a little bit more of an interactive discussion. Enough of the PowerPoint. We all see it every day on Zoom. And Josh, I want to start with you. You gave a little bit of some comments about Yale Ventures and what you're up to there. It was recently kind of rebranded and somewhat rebooted and kind of turbocharged. Talk a little bit about that and what that means for Yale's kind of place in the Connecticut life sciences ecosystem.
Sure. Well, over the last couple of decades, Yale spun out dozens of new startup companies, mostly biotechs, many of whom are previously referenced in Peter's charts at various points in time. But the university is really focused right now on significantly increasing the volume of new innovations and inventions that we are getting out of our labs and out into new startup companies in particular. And so, we're investing significant resources to expand the technology transfer office to be able to cover more of the university. Most of the innovation that we've spun out over the past years, as I said, has been in bioscience, but we're seeing significant growth in the university and interest in commercialization coming out of our School of Engineering, which in itself is growing rapidly, out of our School of the Environment, which is the oldest such school in the country, thankfully with huge amount of commercial interest around climate technologies and many other areas of basic science research as well. And we're working to meet those needs with new accelerator programs that provide our faculty with grant funding, as well as mentorship and support to get to the point where their research can be investable and spun out. And in so doing, create the demand that we're seeing in New Haven right now for space and to build that ecosystem. So working with biolabs, and you'll hear from Marianne in a moment, as an initial kind of incubator space, but then also all the graduation spaces that are popping up. Peter mentioned 101 College Street, which is the biggest that's going up right now, but I'm actually talking to you at the moment from 55 Church Street, which is going to have a ribbon cutting next week, Elm City Bioscience Center, in one of our spin-out companies, Seduma Therapeutics, from a prior meeting here today. But there's many other projects that are popping up around the city as the demand continues to grow and as the ecosystem continues to snowball.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Marianne, Josh gave you a good segue there. Biolabs recently made the decision to open in Connecticut. You are in many life sciences hubs around the country. Talk a little bit about that decision. Why? What led to it?
Sure. Well, a lot of it is really driven by the data that you showed, Peter. New Haven and the region has really got a lot of robust scientific environment. We really wanted to become integrated into an ecosystem with a lot of life science IP spinning out from the local and regional academic institutions. We also formed relationships with a trusted real estate developer, Win Stanley Enterprises, with the build out of 101 College, and other key stakeholders that are really committed to supporting and growing a thriving bioscience ecosystem in the area, including many of my fellow panelists, so Yale Ventures, BioCT, Advanced CT, and hopefully soon with ABCT. And really, it was an opportunity to set up shop here in a very strategically located place on the map, being right in between the booming and existing ecosystem up in the Boston, Cambridge area, and then the growing bioscience hub down in New York. So New Haven's a very strategic location for biolabs to have set up shop.
Great. And Mary, you're doing great work with entrepreneurs on the ground, and tell us a little bit about that, because it obviously is such a natural fit to Marianne and the work and the support that they provide, as well as the spin out activity that Josh alluded to, and Mustafa is going to pick up on here in a minute. You're on mute.
Excuse me. Absolutely. I'm a serial entrepreneur and grew up with a father who's an MD, PhD at Yale, who is a big inventor. So one of the things that I saw for myself, being funded by strategics and by VCs up in Boston, was how important other founders were to my own advancement. And that was really important for the inspiration for ABCT. And so we focus on first-time founders, and Connecticut is really blessed by Pfizer, BMS, BI, Medtronic, and we see that in the data that we've got, which is that about half of the ventures who come through ABCT are out of the universities, Yale, UConn being the top ones, and the individuals coming out of the the legacy companies are the others. They move very fast, they raise more money, but this founders, they've never been founders before. So they need support, which we provide in a structured curriculum. We've got a lot of other founders who come back and talk to them, who they trust to listen to. And there's an extraordinary group of corporations who are dedicated to developing this long-term pipeline at a world-class level, who are here in Connecticut investing to move those ventures forward. So everything's here. The data we see, which we'll talk about, is just extraordinary for Connecticut. The Connecticut Innovations funds about half of the ventures who come through ABCT. We have world-class exited entrepreneurs who are really interested to coach Connecticut teams and move them forward too.
Great. Thanks, Mary. We'll come back to everybody that's already spoken, but Mustafa, I want to go to you. Tell us about UConn Ventures, and most particularly TIP. I think it's such an important piece of our ecosystem, and you and I have had many conversations about how we can continue to grow that, but share that with the audience here.
Absolutely. I think, Peter, you covered the ecosystem across Connecticut very nicely, and UConn provides a piece of that ecosystem. from an academic, clinical, and basic science research, there are a number of areas that feed into life sciences, which is quite unique because classically medical school, dental school, nursing, chemistry, biology, those are the ones that contribute. But because we have such a strong program in the School of Agriculture, Animal Sciences, and related field, the ecosystem is becoming very comprehensive and unique. And to some extent, that is reflected in our incubator. TIP, which is UConn Incubator, is heavily life science oriented, but it's not only life sciences. And I believe that's a valuable characteristics because there are so many adjacent areas that contribute to life sciences that we benefit from. TIP as an incubator has 3 locations in Stores, Farmington, and in Stanford. Stanford is a digital incubator, which includes digital health as well as in silico approaches for drug development. And the way we have designed the incubator as a nonprofit incubator, it's open for all the players to come in. The cost structure is very favorable, and we have not, strongly advertised that outside Connecticut, but on a monthly basis, we get requests and application to come in, and this enhances the collaboration across the board. The other thing that we actively pursue is collaboration with other incubators within the state and out of state. We share a lot of notes together to make sure that the ultimate objective, which is serving the innovators and the startups, are met regardless of where they land within the state.
Great, thanks. And I'm sure we'll come back and drill down on some more of that. But Chris, want to get you in the action here. Real estate is absolutely such an important piece of the equation. Give our audience a sense for what's going on the real estate front, where the centers of excellence are, where the activity is occurring, and what availability looks like. Always an important question.
Yeah, for sure. So like Mustafa said, and Josh, certainly the 2 institutions, right, are really running with this, but and UConn's TIP up in Farmington is doing wonderful things right across the street from Jack's Lab and the medical and dental school and the hospital, which is terrific. But the reality is right now where we're at with the real estate, it's primarily focused, and all the growth is focused primarily around the New Haven market in downtown, right in Yale's front yard, backyard, side yard. So we have about 4.5 million square feet across the entire market, and that includes most of Connecticut in the life sciences of lab space throughout the state, which is a good size for sure, given the size of the state. The bulk of it is in New Haven. Almost all of our new development and focus and growth is in New Haven, for sure. The 101 College Street you alluded to coming online next year, 500,000 square feet, brand new construction. There's a few projects right behind it, including Josh mentioned 55 Church, which is the Elm City. That's an existing Class B building being converted. On the other side of downtown New Haven is Science Park, and there's a terrific pile of assets up there, anchored by 115 Munson Street, which is owned by Twining, L&M, and Goldman Sachs is actually an equity partner in that deal as well. So I think that shows you this is not just mom and pop Connecticut. This is reaching out to some major investors who recognize the importance of the ecosystem and recognize that we are, as Josh has said, it's snowballing. And at JLL, we're super excited about how we're really rounding first base in the ecosystem here, and we're sprinting to second. And the amount of activity in new leases and companies launching and taking new space in 2001 and early 2002, we expect that to really get up and running at the end of 2002 and going into 2003. In fact, so much, I can't get into the weeds of this, but we've been hired to do the leasing for a new build-to-suit project that's going to happen in downtown. It's going to be open by 2025. Likely announcement's going to happen here in the next month. I tried to get to them announced today, but they wouldn't allow me to until there's blue ink on paper. I think we all can understand that being in real estate. But It's going to be a 240,000 square foot, 8-story building right up the street from 101 College, right in the heart of the medical school in Yale, which I think will be filled quickly. And then there's another project out in Branford, which is 10 miles to the east, which is going to be Ryan Companies, who's a national medical developer, purchased some land, is going to develop a healthcare and tech. So it's probably going to be anchored by traditional healthcare, but they're definitely be open their doors to life science as well. So, you know, here in central Connecticut, spec development is a 4-letter word. We don't talk about it that much, but to see spec development happening with the basis of life sciences is going to be huge. So, I'll just wrap it up by saying there's graduation space right now is at a premium. Thanks to BioLabs for coming in and really picking up the slack on the incubator, but it's really that incubator 2.0, right? Right when you get to that critical mass that probably kicks you out of the incubator in that 4, 5, 6,000 square foot range. That's the problem we're solving now. A lot of our startups are hanging in the incubator a little bit longer, maybe jamming in a little more square footage, maybe working from home a little bit more often. But we're quickly solving that graduation space problem in those buildings. Like I said, Science Park is doing it. 55 Churches is doing it in downtown, a few places in Branford. And then obviously BioLabs, when they move into 101 College, is going to have a substantial graduation space presence there as well. Anything else I can answer for you?
Yes, there is, and but I want to hold it because that's an excellent intro to a whole bunch of topics. But I want to go back to Mary, if we could. Mary, let's learn a little bit more about ABCT's track record for, you know, just kind of a little bit of the metrics in the company formation, the sort of graduation rates, whatever kind of you use, and, you know, whether maybe it's space or other metrics that you use to kind of measure outcomes, success, et cetera, because I think it's definitely worth talking about.
Sure, glad to share it. Peter, one of the things we can do is we run programs in Westchester and New York City, and we can compare it. So Connecticut by far leads in terms of the track record. When we look at the company formation, there is a higher incorporation rate coming into the program, and the incorporation rate going out is about 95%. So one of the questions we ask is, why is it so high? I think one of those reasons is because of the resources in Connecticut. Connecticut Innovations pushes a lot of this along because you have to have a company all formed in order to get invested in. So that pushes, in fact, there are other places that are now looking at those kinds of resources to be able to accelerate the process of forming companies. Secondly, if you look at job creation on a per company basis, Connecticut again gains and is the highest, with Westchester being second and New York City being third in terms of per venture started. You know, it's an extraordinary number, and I think part of that is because some of the resources that are here to help these ventures move along so quickly, not just the funding, but the professionals that are here. But we're seeing 200 jobs being created from 45 companies, which is a lot in 5 years. What happens is that with the funders' lack of interest in that money going into equipment, it's going into people. And people have to be put somewhere. And like you say, we have alums who are doubling up, and they're keeping their corporate leaders at home, and they are looking for space and want to get people together. So I think as the comfort level increases about being together and having events in person, we will see a big rush into it. And there is a challenge with space. People are looking for space, and we also see a lot of the latest companies being more working from home. So that's just going to bunch up a group of companies looking for space. They've raised more money in Connecticut than they've raised in New York City or Westchester. It's more than 100 million now. They're staying in business and they're staying here. We did see in the pandemic, people leaving New York to go back home, wherever home was, but we have not seen that in Connecticut. We've seen the ventures stay here. There's not a migration out. So, you know, this is a pretty sticky building it community. And we think that that commitment from the entire ecosystem is a reason for that. That's not something that we definitely saw in some other places. So.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Josh and Mustafa, I want to go to you. You know, is common and typical among many academic institutions in life sciences ecosystems. You often see people kind of working in silos or acting in silos. I think what's unique about what's going on in Connecticut is that we are a small state. We are, you know, and we're not shy about saying that. And that comes with real advantages. And one of them is that we do work together pretty darn well. Everybody on this call knows everybody. And in fact, Josh and Mustafa and or their colleagues were in a meeting with me yesterday. Chris and I talk all the time. Mary and Chris, I'm sure, talk all the time. Mary Ann and Chris are going to be talking. So you get the idea, right? Josh and Mustafa, put a little meat on the bones there and talk about how the symbiotic relationship works.
Well, Josh, I'll go first if you don't mind. I think you pointed to a very valuable comment about Connecticut. Well, we're a big state, but we're not that far from each other. You know, on a weekly basis, I have offices in Stanford, in Farmington, and Stores, and people looking from outside, they feel, boy, this guy is all over the place. But because of the nature of what we do, it requires to walk around, not even drive around, walk around and speak with each other. This happens at the academic level, at the research level. I am co-PI with a number of colleagues in other universities in my academic life. And on a regular basis, we speak. Mary Ann has been kind enough that invited me to her selection committee that she has. So we get to see the companies they're considering and vice versa. We share with the rest of the community what companies are graduating from TIP. Therefore, we can accommodate them better. So that compactness of state and willingness of people to speak with each other and collaborate, I think is one of the unique features. I was on a board of a Southern California company, which was in Pasadena a few years ago. And I had a board meeting in the morning, and I was trying to schedule another meeting at UCLA in the afternoon. I looked at the map. It showed about 20 miles, but I said, I'll give it 40 minutes. It took about 3 hours to get there. And people said, yes, we are close, but nobody goes to see each other in person. And that's definitely not the case in Connecticut. And I think that's one of the valuable features of the state. Josh?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, we often refer to Connecticut as a one phone call state because you can basically get a hold of any decision maker you need for anything going on with one phone call. Because like Peter and Mustafa said, we work very closely together, from the governor to the presidents of these universities and, you know, everybody in between, you know, the CEOs and executives at these companies. And we are working very closely together. So Mustafa, Yale, and UConn are collaborating right now on a major grant application that's really exciting. We are working together also with our community college system. Connecticut is blessed with one of the most highly ranked community college systems in the country, which is providing, you know, direct pipelines into our biotech startups of lab operations staff and other skilled people that we need to support our growth, in addition to the PhDs that we produce and the technologies that we license out. And so there's, tremendous collaboration both between Yale and UConn, but even more broadly with all the other educational institutions, government entities, and in the private sector as well.
Great, thanks, Josh and Mustafa. So we have a question in the chat that I want to open up to the entire panel. By the way, if anyone else has questions, please throw them in the chat, and I'm happy to take them. In fact, eager to get some engagement from anyone out there. The question is, given the growth that we're talking about, where are the constraints, and where are they today, and or where could they be in the future? Is it capital? Is it the physical infrastructure? Is it operational? Any views out there? I certainly have views, but I know all of you have views too. Chris?
Peter, I'll jump in because you mentioned what's the constraint. Perhaps one of the most requested thing at the startup stage is funding, and we all know that. We do have some local angel investors and VCs, but proportional to the size of innovation that happens here, I think that's one of the challenges. And I want to put Josh on the spotlight because Josh was a senior member of governor in the state of Connecticut. And I'm sure that he has heard that challenges of doing business, complexity of doing business. Sorry, Josh, for putting you on a spotlight because you have seen the world from two different angles. You're an innovator, you're an entrepreneur, you were part of the administration, and now you're in the largest university.
Josh couldn't have timed it any better because he had to run to a 1 o'clock call, so he gets dropped. But I'm going to attempt an answer at that and double down and say, look, I think this is every state's, albatross, if you will, right? It's complicated in clearing the pathways to company creation. The state definitely does have a role. And Connecticut can, like many states, do better. And there's a lot of work being done. A lot of this takes, use whatever metaphor you want. It's moving mountains. It's a massive state bureaucracy. They're on multiple IT systems. I could go on and on. Josh obviously saw this firsthand as he was the chief technology officer for Governor Lamont. But I think that some steps have been taken. We've got more to do, and I think it's absolutely fair. And I think one could say it's a constraint. I think in fact, you are saying that. Chris or Marianne, Mary, other observations?
I'm happy to weigh in here. We work with very early stage companies who then we stay in touch with after they come through. I think one of the interesting things about Connecticut as a state is it's a net exporter of cash. It's one of the biggest exports from Connecticut. And I think a number of people are working really hard to create more funding streams. The Tidal River initiative for women founders is one of those that's been supported by the federal government and Connecticut Innovations. We're also are very fortunate to have the angel investment tax credit here to support a lot of wealthy people to invest in startups, and those programs and groups, angel groups, are really supportive. I think one of the big challenges is when you get that money, who do you hire? Because it's such a competitive job market right now. And I think that there are some initiatives in some other states to support and technology talent bridges here, but there are that's really an opportunity, I think, to even expand a program like that, which is underwriting hires on a part-time basis into startups or small companies. But I think there are real constraints on hiring once you get that money.
Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
just
So
gonna,
go ahead, Mary.
oh, sorry. Just gonna echo, what Mustafa and Mary had already pointed out is capital and in the form of, actual funds, monetary, as well as people. I'm really happy to hear, Mary, that you've seen that your funders really want to focus that capital on people and not on equipment. So, a place like Biolabs will help those early stage startups really focus their capital on the R&D and the people and the hiring. So, and I know Advanced CT is here to really build that that workforce here in Connecticut, and everyone else on this call, I think is like I said, is very, very committed to growing the ecosystem here regionally.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Mary,
Chris.
and I'll just chime in here too with real estate. What I said earlier, it's really the graduation space. The need for graduation space is paramount right now. So we're going to build it. It takes a long time. Obviously, if you get your Series A, you got 5 years to go to work. You can't wait 18 months for a building to be built, or even perhaps 8 months for a space to be retrofitted. And those costs, since we don't have a ton, the good news is we don't have a ton of second generation space sitting vacant, right? So most of our space that was built and have been built over the last decade or 2 decades is occupied. You saw that 101 College slide. I mean, that building's not going to open until June or late next year at some point, and it's already leased. So before even the steel is topped out. So that's the thing we have right now, which kind of is clogging up the ecosystem. Is there's nowhere for that 5,000 square foot tenant to launch to. We're starting to fix that. Like I said, 115 Munson Street up in Science Park is going to pre-build some suites. 55 Church is doing it by order. They're not going to pre-build, but they're going to do it. They're going to take some orders as you need space, but certainly we could use some experienced developers up here to grab hold and take some risk and move forward and get this thing rolling.
Okay, good. I think we nailed that. We have another question. Nancy, I'm just doing a time check here. Are we okay? Can we do one or a couple more questions?
Yeah, no, we've got time. We've definitely.
Okay, I think a couple of our panelists have 115 hard steps. So if that's okay, I'm going to sort of guide us to 115.
Okay.
But the next question was about Alexion and AstraZeneca and the development that I alluded to in the slide, and the public-private partnership that was created. The public-private partnership, just to be clear, was for the building that Chris just alluded to. That was 101 College. And while I don't have detailed knowledge of the cap table, so to speak, I do know that the state underwrote between 10 and 15% of the capitalization of that new investment, which is over $225 million, I want to say. And Chris, you may know more. Leave off Josh, and he probably knows the most about this. But the private sector stepped in, obviously, for the balance. I guess the point I would draw from the whole storyline here is our state is actually got a whole program in investing in centers of innovation, and we have a whole. This is part of an economic development strategy that we are very actively pursuing in partnership with many people across the state. And 101 College was an example of that, where place-based investment, where the state is contributing, a significant amount, tens of millions of dollars, but doing it in partnership, obviously, with the private sector. And like any smart investor, the state doesn't want to be underwriting projects on its own. It wants to see the private sector stepping up and voting with its wallet. 101 College was the proverbial no-brainer, given the constraints on the system that Chris just talked about. And that's a great example. And there's going to be more of that, is kind of the punchline. Chris, anything to add there?
No, I think the state is excited about giving money to when they hear the word incubator, right? Incubator means more jobs, more people. And I think that they're open to even graduation space incubator, right? So we call that, you'll hear me use the term, I don't call, in circles around the state, instead of using graduation space, I call it incubator 2.0, because that's really what it is, right? It's vetted startups, startups that have been vetted by the private community financially and have proven that they deserve to go to the next level. So the state is very gung-ho with putting their dollars towards real estate with incubator programs as part of that building.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
Chris,
Peter, Connecticut is a state that's near and dear to my heart because I was born and raised in Connecticut. I'm a Yale College graduate, and I've been on the board of the Jackson Laboratory for 25 years. So, what I recently did a kind of historical timeline analysis in New Haven in particular, and it struck me that the infrastructure investment that was made before the whole life science progress, took off was significant. So Science Park was established in 1981, and it really didn't take off until recently because it was so far from the Yale Center and also from the medical school. And it wasn't until the late 90s when Yale announced $1 billion investment, 500 million in new science facilities and 500 million in the medical school, where people actually started sitting up and taking notice about like what science could do. And then the acquisition of the Yale West Campus for $100 million, downtown crossing, which basically reconnected the medical school with the Yale campus. And then the investment that the state made in the Farmington campus for the Jackson Laboratory, all of this was kind of precursor to what's happening now, where life science development is accelerating at a huge rate. And I think it was all that early investment that really helped to fuel it.
Nancy, we're going to put you on the team.
I was struck. It really was a captivating story when I ended up reviewing it all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very well said. And I think, I guess my punchline here is the state continues to make strategic investments that I think set us up to continue that track record that you just alluded to.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from the field? I don't see any in the chat. And or is there anything burning out there among the panelists that they didn't get a chance to share they want to share?
One of the things that Josh mentioned that is near and dear to my heart is the engineering startups, and they have gone very, very quickly in terms of advancement. And I think one of the challenges is going to be to respond and to provide resources that can actually keep up with the pace of those changes. And I think that that's an opportunity for the whole region to collaborate and also do global collaborations. I think that's going to be a challenge for us and also an incredible opportunity. Fantastic research being done here. Some of that interconnected technology is going to take some effort to pull together, and it's going to require a lot more complex tech transfer, licensing agreements, and we're all going to have to figure out how to do all of that a lot faster.
I think that is a very, very important point, Mary. 1/2 or maybe even more of the life sciences market, which is not often analyzed or alluded to, is synthetic biology or engineering biology, which is creating new products for food, materials, energy, you name it. There are such innovations coming out of this combination between engineering and biology, and it really is the future for a sustainable planet. We've only just begun the trajectory of that part of the industry, and it's not even measured by the major brokerage firms now. But in my mind, it is the opportunity for the future. in the next 100 years.
Mary Ann, did you want to double down there?
Well, I wanted to just add, being a new player in this local ecosystem, I'm very struck at how very complementary everyone is and how really well aligned we all are. We all do have this one goal and one mission, right? To grow Connecticut, to support the life science startups, not just life science, but just the economy here of entrepreneurs, and we're all committed to it. And while we may have different sort of approaches to it, we all, again, are so well aligned in what we're trying to do here. And being the new player in this ecosystem has been fantastic. And really, I'm excited to see how best we can integrate and work with everyone.
Okay, great. I think that's a pretty good note to end on, and we've lost another one of our panelists because of this 1:15 hard stop. So I'm happy to stick around, Nancy, or anyone else that wants to go deep on Connecticut life sciences. With that, I'm going to thank our panelists for participating. Thank you all, the audience, for hanging in there and listening to us, and hopefully you found it useful and educational.
Well, thank you, Peter, and for all the panelists. Connecticut is the last in this series, but certainly not the least. And we do have some time for people to drop into discussion groups now. So Carolina, can you put us in there? Thank you, everybody.